Thank you for waiting. Are there any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. Thank you very much. The first agenda item, item number 4, is the report of the Democratic Services Manager seeking to amend all current delegations previously approved. Because we all know, we've just reviewed the Constitution in full council. So, would you like to?
Oh no, that's not to say.
Who's speaking to this? I will first of all has questions. It's a very simple document. We recognised it in full council, and therefore all we need to do is formally accept it. Would someone move that? Thank you, Nikki. Seconder, thank you, Paul. All those in favour of accepting and adopting this report. Thank you very much. Item 5, amendment of Hackney Carriage Vehicle Licence Conditions, report of the Head of Environment. Can I just ask, are we going to invite Mr. Francis up early, or are we going to wait until we've had the introduction?
We'll do the introduction first.
Yeah, okay. And just to make sure everyone is aware, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed. And to assist with the smooth running of the meeting, where items are to be debated and voted on, I will put forward a motion to follow the officer recommendation and invite the Vice Chair to second the motion to open the debate. That does not indicate how we intend to vote on the matters. And just to make sure everyone knows, I'm Councillor Paling. On my right, I have, I can't remember your name, Laura.
Chaplin.
Mrs. Chaplin, who is legal advisor. On the far right, Kate Goodall from Membership Services, who is note-taking the meeting to make sure all the decisions are noted. On my left, I have Kevin Neelan, who heads up the Environment and Licensing section. On his left, Rachel Penplow, one of the licensing officers. On her left, Paul Gibbs, one of the licensing officers. And James Brough, who is an enforcement officer. And all the members in front of us all are here and will be voting on the issue today. I'm going to ask Kevin to introduce the report and then invite Mr. Francis to make his representations to committee. And I am sure we've all read his written representations, so this is his opportunity to add anything further. I don't think I need to remind you, Mr. Francis, that it is only this issue that we're dealing with today, not any of the other issues that you've raised elsewhere. Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to hand over, there will be questions of the officers and or Mr. Francis, and then we will ask Mr. Francis to retake his seat at the back of the room, and if there's any advice to be given to the committee, Laura Chaplin will give it, and then we'll move the motion to formally open the debate on the topic and subsequently move to the vote. Seem to be having, is it signal problems that we, I'm sorry about that.
It's fine, so we can move.
Thank you, Chair. This report relates to a request from one of Gedling's licensed drivers to amend Condition 6 of the Hackney Carriage vehicle licence conditions relating to the roof sign on the basis that the requirement to have a roof sign was a risk to the health and safety of him, his passengers and the public at large. Members will be aware that the roof sign is not to state the obvious, is the sign that sits on the roof and indicates that the vehicle is actually a taxi and that it may or may not be for hire. At the Environment and Licensing meeting held on the 13th of July, the driver in question was invited to make representations to members, and on this occasion members did not allow the application but asked for officers to commence a consultation to seek the views of the trade and the wider public. In the consultation, the roof sign question was introduced on the website as follows. Gedling Borough Council, Hackney Carriage vehicle licence conditions, condition 6.4, state that a roof sign shall be affixed to the roof of the vehicle in a proper manner and position at all times. The question was further introduced with the wording that the reason for this condition is that it is necessary to be able to clearly identify the vehicle as a Hackney carriage as opposed to a private hire vehicle. This is crucial for the safety of members of the public to allow them to identify that a vehicle is a Hackney carriage and as such is one that is entitled to apply for hire and be flagged down. It is also crucial in the identification of the vehicle as a Hackney carriage for enforcement agencies countrywide. A request has been made to remove this condition and the Environment and Licensing Committee wish to seek the views of the public and stakeholders in relation to this condition. Consultees were then asked the question, do you consider that this condition should be removed? And they were invited to respond either yes or no. The consultation has now ended and the results are attached on the report at Appendix F. The Council emailed the consultation link to all licensed drivers, which number approximately 800, as well as being published on the Council's website. Only 40 responses were received and it is not identifiable from the figures how many of these were licensed drivers, as the link was also included in the public consultation page on the Council's website. Of the responses to the question regarding removing the roof sign condition, 51% were in favour of the condition being removed and 49% were against the removal of the condition. Officers have considered the responses submitted as part of the consultation and officers' responses can be seen in the report at Appendix G. Of those responses that supported the removal, most were on the basis of convenience. I think the point that the drivers were making is that they take the roof sign off at the end of the day so it doesn't get stolen and then they have to put it back on or for whatever reasons when it's parked on the road and it's probably inconvenient for them. A response was also received from the compliance manager at Nottingham City Council, which can be seen at Appendix H. It was overwhelmingly supporting the retention of the condition, as it is the only distinguishable feature for the public and authorised officers to identify the vehicle as a vehicle and the type of licence under which it operates. With regard to the roof sign, members will recall that back in 2018 they considered the roof sign condition following issues relating to the ambiguity of the condition, and at that time members resolved to clarify the wording of the condition, which now means the roof sign should be maintained on the vehicle at all times. Officers' view is that the Council is legally entitled to impose any condition it feels reasonably necessary that allows for a vehicle to be easily identifiable. Officers feel that the fact that the Act specifically allows for the Council to condition a Hackney carriage so that it is clearly identifiable as a Hackney carriage supports the use of the roof sign. Officers feel that the plates alone do not clearly identify the vehicle as a Hackney carriage. When a Hackney carriage is licensed as a Hackney carriage, it is always a Hackney carriage and can never be anything else. Hackney carriages are entitled to carry out private hire work anywhere in the country, And it is common practice both regionally and nationally for licensing enforcement officers and members of the public to identify Hackney carriages by their distinctive markings and features. At Gedling, there has been the presence of a roof sign since at least 2007, and the presence of a roof sign has assisted both Gedling Borough Council enforcement officers and officers from other local authorities when carrying out enforcement, and members of the public can clearly identify the type of vehicle that is displaying the roof sign, which is vital for public safety reasons. Officers feel that the entire licensing regime is underpinned by the licensing authority's need to promote public safety. This is paramount and it should not be compromised. In balancing the rights of drivers against public safety, the safety of the public should come on top, and we're quite clear on that. Part of that safety comes from being able to enforce against drivers, and the roof sign is vital in identifying Hackney carriages. It is a fact that private hire vehicles can operate in different parts of the country, but they have a licensed operator, which is another level of security that a Hackney carriage does not. The report identifies other options, such as wrapping the vehicle to identify it as a Hackney carriage or having specific makes and models of vehicles. However, both these options are just as likely to attract members of the public who try to hail them as Hackney carriages and are not cost effective for the driver. Hackney carriages need to be clearly identifiable so that members of the public can hail them in the street, and as such, officers have prepared some pre-recorded videos to show the importance of roof signs, and I think we'll look at those in a minute. And finally, officers' recommendation is laid out in the report at page 19. Officers recommend that members do not make any amendments to the Hackney Carriage Vehicle Licence conditions to promote public safety, which is a paramount objective to the licensing regime. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any initial questions? Shall we move on to looking at the video?
We just need to check with regards to, there were some technological issues, and I think it was just some stills that, or one clip and then a couple of stills that Mr. Brough was going to go through. So I just need to see if things were all right with that.
Just scrolling through and see if it looks.
Come up from there, I can't see it. Oh, hang on. So if you move his mouse across, can you see it? Yeah, there you go.
So I'm now looking down there from my computer screen rather than here, so I do apologise, councillors. Okay, this is the view of Wall Avenue at night, showing the benefit of having a vehicle with the top side on to make it identifiable, and then you'll see how it carries on. If it works. Yes, we'll
Good. There we go.
It's an actual second screen.
So you've got your two.
As you can see, this vehicle is fitted with a GBC plate. It doesn't become visible. That's the small area on the bottom right. The same vehicle, the same distance, the top sign is fitted but not illuminated. The GBC Hackney plate is just to the right above the registration plate of the vehicle, the registration mark. I'll play again and then we'll go to some images. I do apologise if we had more moving images, but we have real technical issues. Just to replay it. This is with the view of somebody wanting to flag a Hackney down at night.
Councillor Wilkinson, do you want to ask your question?
Thank you, Chair. Just to help my own understanding, Jim. would it be correct that the light only needs to be illuminated when the driver is available for hire and switched off when they're not available? Is that correct?
That's what the regulations state.
Thank you.
Okay. Where is he? Next bar across. Thank you. I do apologise for this, councillors. Right. All I'd ask you to do is this vehicle here, what is it? In fact, it is a Wolverhampton private hire vehicle. So it can't stop in Gedling. It has door panels on, which is some of our Hackneys do, but it's not identifiable. It's a private hire vehicle, so it couldn't be flagged down. And that's a hire vehicle. Okay. This is a Nottingham City Council private hire vehicle. It's only distinguishable by this yellow plate here. We did have moving images of them, but we were just unable to play them. Come on. Am I there? I can't see Paul.
Yeah. Scroll it down, that grey bar. That's it.
That one there.
Click below it.
Yeah. This vehicle here, it's not very clear, it's much clearer on the video, but this is a Gedling Borough Council Hackney carriage, fully liveried. He's got plates on the side, he's got a roof sign, and he's also displaying our private hire plate. You can't see it until the vehicle is on top of you. Again, if somebody wanted to flag this vehicle down, the only chance my submission to yourselves is the only chance you've got of seeing it is with the roof light being on. I'm sorry for the quality of the images. We did prepare better, but I'm afraid it's... thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions before I move on? Councillor Scroggy.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question for the officers, really. Obviously, we all know the difference between a private hire and Hackney carriage licence. How easy is it to change from a Hackney carriage licence to a private hire licence? Can they convert their licence? Is there a fee? Is it possible? Does it need to go through committee?
There are two separate tests. As a private hire vehicle is not required a taximeter, that element of the test would not be afforded to that person if they wanted a private hire vehicle licence. But everything else, the safety and the comfort of the vehicle, would still be tested to the same standard as a Hackney carriage.
The driver's licence is... we issue a joint driver's licence, so the driver would not need to change their actual physical driver's licence because they are licensed as a private hire driver and a Hackney carriage driver. So, that point of it, the vehicles, it's just the vehicle that's different.
I think the point I'm trying to get to is, and maybe I should have been clearer, is if we've got a Hackney carriage driver, they've did all the tests, they've already got the Hackney carriage licence on the car or whatever, the plate. How simple would it be to have that plate converted if they wanted to change to become private hire only?
They would have to reapply because it's a totally different licence. So the vehicle would be retested, but to the private hire standard, which is effectively minus the requirement of a taximeter.
And they'd have to pay the same, the fees all over again?
Yes.
Correct?
Councillor Tarsley Hinton.
Thanks, Chair. That photograph there on Nottingham Road of the white vehicle in bright sunshine, how would a member of public know that that vehicle is available for hire or not? Because in bright sunshine, how would they know whether the roof sign is illuminated or not?
Councillor, you have a very good point there. All I can say is it's better than nothing. The only alternative we have is to specify something like a London-style taxi or an expensive colour scheme to say this is a Hackney Carriage. That's the only definition, that's the only device we have to do it. It's particularly at night is an advantage, but daytime it does make a little bit of difference. Again, in bright sunlight, you have a very good point.
Thank you, Chair. Can I come back on that one, please? If the roof sign wasn't there and it was only available for private hire, then that's clearer to the public than the confusion possibly being reigned by having a roof sign, illuminated or not. As we saw on Worrell Avenue, it was perfect in the dark, but no use in the light. If the roof sign wasn't there, people would know immediately that there wasn't a taxi that they could hail, as in a Hackney situation.
Councillor, what I would say to you is they wouldn't know at all whether the vehicle was any form of taxi. The Hackney is there primarily within Gedling for members of the public to flag down if they wish to hail a ride, and the Hackney Carriage is obliged to stop unless it's busy or they have a very good reason. The person could then complain to us if they said a vehicle came past us with a roof sign on, didn't stop. We could then speak to them, but how would you know what this vehicle driving towards you is until it's gone past and you're trying to stare at a very small plate like this and it's gone? If you did even pick it out in traffic, which is not, as you can see yourself, not the easiest.
Yes, but if it's only a private hire vehicle, then there's no need, in my view, to have a roof sign, because he can't be hailed anyway.
Exactly, sir. That the differential is there's a roof sign on it, so you can see it's a Hackney. Flag it down. In my submission to you, sir.
I think the issue here, Councillor, is that a private hire vehicle licence is a private hire vehicle licence. It's different to a Hackney Carriage vehicle licence. So there's two different sets. You either licence your vehicle as a private hire vehicle or you licence it as a Hackney Carriage vehicle. Now, it is correct, Hackney Carriage vehicles can undertake private hire work, and that is ultimately the point that you're probably getting to.
That's the point I'm trying to make, thank you.
But the issue being it's still a Hackney Carriage, and it's only entitled to do that because it's a Hackney Carriage. And so the point being, the roof sign is required on the Hackney Carriage vehicle licence.
But he's only allowed to be Hackney if he's licensed in Gedling. He can then be a Hackney Carriage in the Gedling Borough district.
Absolutely.
So if he's operating, he or she is operating in any other part of the country other than their licensing body.
He's entitled to work private hire because he's a Hackney Carriage, but it's because he's a Hackney Carriage that he's entitled to work private hire. He doesn't have an operator as such. They don't have the security in place that a private hire vehicle would have. And so I see that's the issue. That is ultimately why we're here. So it would probably be beneficial if there's no more questions specifically about those pictures. If we let Mr. Francis make his representations that he wishes to, then questions can be asked of officers and Mr. Francis if necessary, and then that can form part of the debate. Okay?
Certainly. Councillor Scroggie, do you want to delay things, or was it a question that...
It's something that Clive's just sort of brought up. It's just twigged my memory, twigged my thought process. I think it was Laura, actually. A Hackney Carriage, you've just mentioned, doesn't necessarily need to work for an operator. They can do it independently on their own. Is that correct?
Can I?
I'm sure, I'd say the licensing officer will probably be better just to clarify that, but...
The proprietor of a Hackney Carriage can operate solely as himself, driving the vehicle, and they can ply the streets of Gedling or whichever local authority have licensed them.
Okay, and the question then is, do we know how many operators we have that operate independently and not associated with or employed by a company? And how many could potentially, if the condition was to be removed, how many would be potentially making a loss? Do we know?
And
Every Hackney Carriage proprietor is effectively their own company driving that vehicle to fulfil Hackney carriage journeys within Gedling Borough if they are not attached or associated to an operator.
I think I will add to that I know that quite often the drivers change companies that they work for and in fact have agreed to work for more than one company. At that point, they are not using their Hackney licence, they're using their PHV licence, which is what they're allowed to do. It's only that they are taking the notes from the operator. And so the operators in Arnold and or Nottingham may call them and send them on their way somewhere.
Madam Chair, you're basically correct. But the Hackney carriage is still a Hackney carriage.
It is
may
still
be
a Hackney carriage, but they're operating as.
Yeah, he's undertaking private hire work,
Yes.
but the vehicle is still a Hackney. It's
Yeah.
just an important point to make. Thank you, Chair.
If I may, Chair, I can just clarify, the status of the vehicle does not change. What actually changes is the status of the work it undertakes. Thank you.
Are you okay now? No? Okay.
Sorry. No, the point I was trying to make is if we've got drivers out there that solely rely on being flagged down for their business, if we remove the condition, what I was trying to get at is, do we know how many potential drivers that could affect? Right.
But it changes daily. Depends what the driver wants to do.
So I'd like to invite Mr. Francis to come and make his extra points, and I believe he wanted to clarify some things that were already said, but we'll see if they... Yes, please, come to the front here.
What do I do, just press it? If it's red, it's working. Can you hear me? Brilliant. I just wanted to clarify something very quickly. What Jim said was incorrect, no disrespect. We don't have to stop if we're flagged down. The legal requirement is under section 53 of the Town Police Clauses Act, okay, which literally stipulates that we have to be on a Hackney carriage, on a Hackney carriage rank, standing for hire, or on a street in Gedling, standing for hire. I'm sure Laura will want to know this, but there is a citation in the administrative court, Hunt v Morgan, which literally states that you have to be standing for hire either on a Hackney carriage rank or in a street. If you are flagged down, you can legally, you can ignore that customer and carry on driving. There doesn't have to be a reasonable excuse. There doesn't have to be anything. You're only legally obliged to accept the fare if you're on the Hackney rank or you're parked in Gedling. There's also another point that I'd like to raise about the for hire sign itself and people talking about people losing business. I'm not asking for the for hire sign to be banned. So if you are a Hackney carriage driver in Gedling Borough Council and you want to exhibit that for hire sign and you want to make that decision yourself as a self-employed Hackney carriage driver and you're willing to take that step to get the business, you can continue using that for hire sign and getting flagged down. What I'm asking for is if you are not willing to take that risk, if you do not want to have that for hire sign on, you shouldn't have to have it on. I'm not saying it should be stopped from being on completely. So I'm not talking about taking away anybody's business that works as a Hackney carriage driver in Gedling. Absolutely and categorically not. I'm saying give us the choice to make that decision because we are self-employed. We have the Health and Safety at Work Act to abide by, to take away that for hire sign and put it in the boot. Now, there was a couple of other things about the video. You couldn't see that hire sign at night when the light was on, when the light was off. So that video is pointless because it's basically showing that it actually showed my point, which you can't see that roof sign in the dark unless it's illuminated. I've never illuminated the roof sign in 2.5 years, never intend to. So that roof sign being on the vehicle in the dark is pointless because you can't see it anyway. So there's no point The only time that roof sign has a point at night is if you turn it on and you want to be hailed in the street. I've never turned it on, so I don't see the need for that. So I just thought I'd put that in relation to the videos. Furthermore, about the consultation, which Kevin was talking about, there's quite a few problems with some of the officers' responses that I just wanted to quickly raise, because I found them the other day. I haven't had much time working quite a lot, because we're obviously short of taxis. 1,410 were lost in the Nottingham and surrounding areas over a period of 2 years. So that's 1,410 taxis gone off the streets, vehicles disappeared. Like the Jenga tower, you pull the vehicles out, the taxi industry collapses. So that's exactly partly why people are trying to force their way into the vehicle. They're trying to jump out in front of us, they're trying to flag us down because of that for hire sign. So I just wanted to talk about Appendix G, which was the second officer response. The first officer response in relation to the consultation. I don't think it was fair. That consultation question, as read out by Kevin, is not putting the other side to it. All it did was basically tell the people that were being consulted on, this is for your safety, it is imperative for your safety, do you want it removed? There was no other side to the consultation. It didn't say, however, there is this argument that can be put forward about the fact that this roof sign is causing it to be unsafe. So that, to me, shows it's not a fair consultation. The legal requirements of consultations is that it provides both views, so somebody can make an independent decision based on what they've read. That didn't. That consultation question just showed one side. Even with that, it's still come out in favour of removing the condition. So I'm happy with that, of course I am. I would not be. So with regards to, there is a comment which I found quite concerning in relation to, Kevin said that most of the consultation comments were about convenience and about having to take it off, wanting to take it off when they're not working private hire. That's not the case. If you look at the consultation answers, some of them are specifically about safety issues. Line 3 of Appendix G specifically talks about people's vehicles being broken into because the roof sign is on there and the plates are on there.
Have you analysed how many of those comments relate to the number of drivers in Gedling?
I think there's 40.
Not relating to the issue that you've just spoken about breaking into the vehicle.
Oh yeah, no, I don't know, but I'm just going through the consultation comments,
Okay,
Marlon.
thank you.
Yeah. So on line 3, the officer's response, Appendix G, line 3, is never leave valuables in the vehicle. But that doesn't stop somebody breaking in your window to get in there and finding there's no valuables. That's not helpful. You may not leave any valuables in the vehicle, but if somebody sees the for hire sign and the plates, they're going to break in anyway. They don't know if it's under so it doesn't really matter. So I don't genuinely understand that, to be fair. With regards to, there is one saying, after speaking to many customers, they have no idea there is a difference between a private hire taxi and a Hackney carriage. They only recognise London-type taxis as Hackneys. The officer's response is if there's already confusion for members of the public, then a Hackney carriage would, a roof sign assists. Well, if they're getting in the vehicle, they're going to be able to see on the front and back that the plates say Hackney carriage in big letters. So I don't see how a roof sign is going to assist that. Also, currently, with regards to the situation with a lack of taxis, Hackneys and private hire, customers don't care. They really don't. They want a licensed vehicle that is licensed to take passengers, that has been set to a certain standard, that is safe, and the driver is licensed and checked. They don't care if they book through any app or they book through any operator. They don't care if it's got a roof sign. They don't care if it's a Hackney. They don't care if it's private hire. They just care that it's plated correctly, inspected to a standard set by a local authority. They genuinely don't care.
I think you've made those points. Is there anything new?
Yeah, there is. Just a few more. I know I need to be quick, but I need to cover them off, because if I don't cover them off, then I won't be able to. Okay. The last one, and this is the last one, Councillor Palin, sorry. Gedling Borough Council Hackney carriages should be clearly identifiable, so if I want to hire one, I'm able to see it. If the taxi roof sign condition is removed, perhaps you could consider having a distinctive colour. The roof sign, it says that they agree with this comment, the officer agrees with the comment, but it can have the opposite effect. If I'm driving through Gedling with a for hire sign on and I refuse to stop for a passenger who's hailing me, which I'm legally entitled to do, that can have the opposite effect. That can make them angry, that can make them annoyed, that can make them concerned. Why didn't that driver pick me up? Is it the way I look? Is it down to discrimination? Etc., etc. That could lead to a complaint when the driver does not legally, under any circumstances, when driving or not standing at a Hackney carriage rank or in a street, have to stop. So saying we agree with this comment, it can have the opposite effect. If I take that for hire sign off, they're not going to try and flag me down. They're not going to think that I've driven by them and completely ignored them, down to the colour of their skin or their sex or their gender or any protected characteristics. They are not going to feel like I've let them down if that for hire sign is off there. If it's on, all those feelings come into play. So that's another reason why it should be taken off, not left on.
Thank you. It's raised one immediate question for me. One of the licensing officers might be able to answer. How many such complaints have you taken forward about people complaining when drivers have not stopped when they've been flagged down? I certainly don't recall any ever coming to committee on those lines. So perhaps it was a query that was made, but not a full complaint follow through.
We've had initial contact from members of the public with respect to being refused when the vehicle's been stopped on the rank.
And as Mr. Francis says, that is when he expects the people to be available to be a taxi for them, yes.
That's right, and then that's why
So-
that's
so
when
you
we would conduct
investigate
an
that one?
investigation.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Councillor Gibbon.
Yeah, Mr. Francis, yeah, and to the panel as well. Surely these signs are detachable, easily detachable. So to me, that's less of an issue. If you didn't want to be seen as a taxi to be flagged down, you just detach that sign.
Councillor Gibbons, no, we do not allow that. That is infringing the licence to detach it. That's why we're discussing that opportunity or not at the moment. Councillor Scroggy.
Yeah, just a question for you, Mr. Francis. In the report, I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but you alluded that the majority of your work is private hire. And if so, would it not be more beneficial if you change your licence to a private hire licence? Would that alleviate some of the issues that you highlight?
So yes, it would for me personally. I can do that within a space of 3 months and I can pay a lot less for that licence for private hire with, say, Wolverhampton. But I'm concerned about the safety of members of the public, passengers and drivers. I can go somewhere else and drive somewhere else with my head over there. But I'm concerned about other drivers, I'm concerned about passengers, and I'm concerned about public safety. I can easily go home tonight, get a licence with Wolverhampton, never look back. But I'm concerned about passengers, members of the public, and drivers. That's why I'm doing this. I'm not doing this because I want to take my time to do all this. I'm doing this because I want people to be safe. That's why I'm doing this. I can easily just go away and be selfish and get a private hire, but I don't want to. I want to be here to protect members of the public, passengers and drivers.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a little bit unsure, Mr. Francis, about how you think Hackney carriages should identify themselves, or do you feel that they should be identified at all?
Yes, sir. I think Hackney carriages should be identifiable as Hackney carriages. They are plated vehicles. I have no issue with that. The issue I have is with the roof sign. Now, the officers are saying that the roof sign identifies it as a Hackney and that is about safety. but they've not said why it's about safety that you need to identify it. But 23 other licensing councils in the UK don't have a roof sign condition for Hackneys. So they drive without a roof sign, and they are Hackneys. Also, and I stopped when I got so far down, Rutland, Northampton, Newcastle, Hart District, Mid Sussex, East Renfrewshire, Harlow, Nuneaton and Bedworth. There's how far I got down at the loads and loads of councils when I had time. They don't require, they allow roof signs on private hire. Northampton actually specifically mandate a roof sign on a private hire vehicle. So if I'm taking a fare down to Northampton and I'm in Northampton area, I will not, with that roof sign, that will not help to distinguish anything, because the rest of the vehicles in Northampton, all of them, or that are licensed by that council, have roof signs. It is actually mandatory for a roof sign in Northampton if you're private hire. So I don't have a problem with being identifiable as a Hackney carriage. I have a problem with looking like I'm for hire when I'm not.
Councillor.
Thank you. Just to clarify a question Councillor Gibbons had, is the sign is detachable once you're off your shift, isn't it? You can take it off the top of your car when you're off your shift.
Yeah. So if the vehicle is parked up at the end of the day, or it's off the road, or it's in the garage for repairs or something of that nature, you're quite right. The light component itself is detachable, so it's sort of a sticky-on thing. So you was correct in that manner. But whilst the vehicle is operating, driving on the road at any time, it is always a Hackney carriage, and it must also always comply with the Hackney carriage conditions. One of those conditions is the presence of the roof sign on the top of the vehicle. But you're right, it's not an integrated part of the vehicle, otherwise that would be like a London-style taxi or something of that
Mr.
nature.
Francis.
Yes, that's incorrect. If you read condition 2A, 6A4 and 8B of the licensing conditions, it specifically states that at all times that for hire sign needs to be on the top and the plates need to be on the front and the rear. There's no ambiguity at all times, irrespective of how that vehicle is being used, and that is directly written in condition 8B of the Gedling Borough Council licensing conditions. I cannot remove that sign, because also my insurance company, as other insurance companies do have, sir, is they have a condition that you have to be abiding by your licensing conditions at all times. If my vehicle is stolen from outside my house and that for hire sign's not on there and the front and back plates aren't on there, I take that risk because I'm disregarding the conditions. So what Kevin said is incorrect, unfortunately. And that's in your pack. It's fully there, black and white, in writing.
So on that note, there's a degree of proportionality. I'm supposing that there are from time to time when there may be a practical reason if the vehicle was, having some maintenance on it or something of that reason where it comes off. The point you made was, is it detachable? Yes, it is detachable.
Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chair. Clearly, it's something you're very passionate about, and I understand that. But looking at the number of responses to this petition, questionnaire, that was so low when you think of the number of taxi drivers. I do wonder if it's got the same importance or same concern to other drivers. As somebody who's been involved in polling in my professional life, this wouldn't be treated as with any relevance because it is so small. I just wonder why that is, and to me, given that all the drivers were asked, it must mean that this issue isn't as important to others as it is to you. Would you agree?
No, respectfully, I wouldn't. You wouldn't. For example, if you look at another consultation that was launched recently on the taxi standards, which includes mandatory CCTV and things like that, you'll get that at some point. That was also launched alongside it. The numbers are about the same as the responses to that as they were to the roof sign. Now, not trying to enrage anybody, but, at the end of the day, the consultation is put out there for a reason. It doesn't matter how many people respond, it's the results of the consultation that matters. Because if every single consultation required a specific threshold to be met in relation to how many people responded, then most consultations may or may not be null and void. It's like, I don't mean to enrage Councillor Wilkinson, but with regards to the European Union election, if 52-48 is 49-51, it is what it is. You can't decide either way. The consultation was done, and no matter which side you are on, maybe I was on the losing side, I think that you have to take the results, ma'am, of the consultation itself and take it as that.
I think my point was, if this was such a big issue to other drivers, they'd have commented, and they clearly didn't, did they?
But then you would need to say that about every single consultation that ever took place, ma'am, sorry.
But that's correct. It's possibly not that big a deal to the other consultations. Perhaps weren't that important to other drivers. They didn't feel the need to weigh in.
I'm not. Please don't take this the wrong way. I'm not saying you're wrong. What I'm saying is, you have to look at the results of the consultation. We don't know what...
Mr. Francis, we are looking at the results of the consultation as well. And although we have the results of the consultation, it's very narrow, and we have to balance the safety of the public, which is why we're having the whole debate, because if it was just the consultation, we would not need the debate because, as you say, one vote would carry it. So we are having the discussion in order to clarify whether that one vote is paramount for us in our decision making, or whether the safety of the passengers may be at risk if we allow that vote to carry your request. Is that okay?
I do understand that. I'm just saying, to me, you're talking about the safety again, but there's never been any argument put forward as to safety for why it needs to be on there.
I would ask, you talked about 23 local authorities. How many local authorities are there who register taxis?
I think from what I've seen, there's around about 200, but just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean you have to.
No, it's something more like 400.
Is it 400? Well, still, just because everybody's doing it doesn't mean that you have to.
Councillor Scroggy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to ask a question. Obviously, here we are in Gedling Borough Council. Obviously, we can't make the decisions of Broxtowe and Nottingham City and stuff like that. And you mentioned public safety. So from that angle, do you know how many incidents has been in regards to Gedling Borough licensed drivers? How many public safety incidents?
I can only talk for myself, which is what I've experienced, which is what you've seen in the representations that I made. I can also talk about what happens under other circumstances where I have some Gedling Borough Council drivers, as Paul will attest to, don't have the for hire sign on. They take it off. They act otherwise in accordance with the conditions. When I'm pulling at the train station to pick somebody up or drop somebody off on a private hire booking, I'm the one approached because I'm the one obeying the rules. I'm the one with the for hire sign on. The ones that aren't obeying the rules are left well alone, everything's safe for them, and off they drive. So in essence, I'm being punished for abiding by the regulations. Now, with regards to other incidents at other councils, I can't speak to that. I can only tell you exactly what's happened to me and in my taxi.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis.
Yes, thank you. The point that Councillor Scroggy raised is very similar to one I want to raise. I'm interested, it's clear that the main basis of your case is with regard to public safety and the safety of drivers, is that correct?
100%, absolutely. That's what it's about, and this is causing a problem.
Okay, so can you've explained that you can only give personal anecdotes, which is, understood. Can I ask our officers how many cases relating to public safety or driver safety have been reported to themselves in relation to the displaying of the for hire sign?
None. We haven't had any complaints relating to the displaying of a roof sign.
Thank you.
Councillor Gibbons.
Right, it's sort of like probably a basic basic question is that you're required to keep the roof sign on all the time, and it's to identify whether you're actually legally allowed to work within Gedling. Also, if you stray over into another area and you've got your sign on. So when you're travelling around the country, do you have to, how long do you have to keep that sign on for? How long? So are you required to keep that sign on?
The conditions of the licence are fixed when the licence is issued, and it does not change. So for the vehicle to be compliant at all times, the roof light needs to be on at all times. If I may, I'll take this opportunity. Some drivers have had the vehicles broken into because they've been identified as a Hackney carriage, and some have requested that, can I take it off at night to minimise it looking like a Hackney carriage? We have to have some balance of leniency. We could turn around and say, no, that should stop on at all times. But, you know, we're in a society where things do get damaged and broken into, and we try and assist our licensees as much as possible. So that's where we're a little bit flexible in saying, if you want to disguise your vehicle from being a Hackney carriage, when it is not working, when you're fast asleep in bed, by all means do so.
Yeah, just coming back on that, there's quite a bit of grey area there. I know. As a council, we're being flexible to that, but there is a grey area. And it seems to me, in parts of it, we could meet in the middle somewhere along these lines.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Yeah, I've got a question to the officers and then a follow-up to Mr Francis, based on something that Mr Francis has just alleged, which is that Hackney drivers are taking their roof signs off and picking up fares at the station. How many cases have you been made aware of that happening? And a question to Mr Francis is, if you are aware that this is happening, why aren't you reporting it to the licensing authority?
I worked until 3 years ago, actually for Nottingham City, after I retired. And Nottingham Station is one of the places their officers go and check. In fact, I'm working with them in the near future, and I will expect the second half of the shift will be at the station, because we will do Gedling beforehand. There are one or two drivers that turn up without top signs. We've had, at the top of my head, this is a rough figure, probably 20 complaints in the last year, but they will be the vehicles that the Nottingham City officers will check because they aren't complying with their Hackney conditions. So they go over to them and they will follow it up. And Mr Francis is correct, there are people who don't stick to all the rules, and it's a start of a 10, and usually it will not just be a top site complaint, it will be something else because they've done an examination, because there's a failure to comply with the top light, and something else comes from it. But the majority of the people they see down there do have them on, particularly recently, because they've been making sure.
So basically you follow up on complaint?
Every time, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, with regards to that, Councillor Wilkinson, sir, I think you've misunderstood me potentially. When I pull in at the train station and my for hire sign is on the roof, I am there to pick up a passenger that is pre-booked or drop off a passenger that is pre-booked, which I am legally entitled to do. Those drivers that pull in after me are either there again to drop off or pick up. Pre-booked they're allowed to do. What I'm saying is, I'm the one that is subject to the abuse. I'm the one that's subject to being shouted at and demanded that I take that passenger, because I'm the one complying with the conditions because I've got the for hire sign on. They just pottle in, pick up their passenger, nobody approaches them, and off they drive. So basically, because I abide by all the conditions and I do my job and I do what I'm told, I'm then the one that gets approached.
As do those drivers, though, if they are private hire drivers?
But no, because they haven't got the for hire sign on, which they legally have to do. That's why they're not being approached to take fares off the street, because they don't have the for hire sign on the vehicle.
Can I just check that you told me you didn't put your light on your for hire sign?
The light makes no difference, Mum. It's about the fact it says for hire. So if I took it off and I broke the conditions like some drivers do, I wouldn't have need to be here today, because it wouldn't happen to me what I'm saying happens. Because
When I've been at the station, unfortunately, I've tried to get in the wrong taxi, having booked one, and, you know, a white car comes up and you don't check the licence number. But I have to ask, am I the right passenger? Because there's half a dozen of us waiting.
Yeah.
And I can see it's easy to do, but that's the same for all drivers, whether you've got the light on, the top light on or not. Anyway.
Yes, sorry, hi. Well, I've probably got two questions really, because one question's come to me now. If you don't have the roof sign up, you have to have some other form of identification. I've just come back from Portugal, and all the Hackney cabs there were bright yellow. So, and they did say, talking to one taxi driver, he can work as a private hire, but he's always going to be bright yellow. So that same situation's going to occur, isn't it? If you turn up bright yellow to the railway station, you will still have and you're doing a private hire, somebody is going to still think you're a call taxi that they can get into. So that doesn't negate the problem, I don't think. I mean, you may disagree with me. The other question I've got, which is for the officers, if the taxi isn't being used as a taxi and the person's using it for private, maybe to go on holiday, they obviously don't want to go down to the seaside with the sign up. Are they allowed to take it down when they're using it for their own private purposes? Thank you.
Do you want to come back about surrendering for holiday?
The conditions state that it should be in situ at all times, but we do recognise that the taxi can double up as the family car. And when they family go on holiday, yes, if the driver wishes to, he can surrender the plates to the council for safekeeping while him and his family go on holiday. This is, again, to try and facilitate the licensee over their circumstances. So we'll happily take the plates if they're surrendered by the driver. I'm going away for a week, Paul, Jim, whoever. Can I look after my plates? And can my taxi not be recognised as a taxi so my wife can drive it?
Yeah, just coming back on that point. Is that clearly written down somewhere as an option, or is that down to an officer's discretion?
That's down to each individual request and officer's discretion. But the legislation states that only a licensed driver can drive the vehicle. Now, if a driver came to us and said, Paul, I'm going on holiday, going down to Cornwall, I don't want to do all the driving, I want to share the driver with my partner, is that possible? That's a solution that we could potentially consider.
Sorry to be pedantic, but is that written down somewhere? So when a taxi driver has his licence, it says, look, oh, by the way, if you need to go on holiday, there is this...
No.
Would it not be wise to do that?
Each and every case is considered on its own merits.
But we're here on different... We're here now, aren't we? Because of the grey
I think,
areas.
to be fair, we're slightly deviating from what we're here for.
Yeah, we probably are.
We're here
thank you.
to discuss the conditions of licence. Thank you.
I think just to clarify, Councillor Gibbons, the issue over going on holiday or overnight when you aren't working isn't the issue that we're here for today. Mr Francis is saying, I'm a Hackney vehicle and I don't want to display that sign because I do private hire. And so the suggestion of the grey area, I'm not, waving hands at me.
Yeah,
So the issue for today is the application to have that condition amended or removed on the basis that it's a health and safety issue because Mr Francis undertakes private hire work as opposed to Hackney carriage work. That's all. I just wanted to say that's the issue here, not when one goes on holiday, anything that the council may do to try and assist that.
And I would add to that, Councillor Gibbons, we regularly review the terms and conditions, and it could be that that recommendation that you have just seemingly made, to me, I think you're making, could be included.
Yeah,
but that's not the issue for today.
The point is that the council is going to make a decision, and there are a couple of grey areas that may influence those areas. And as if you just said, Chair, it may be a case of revisiting parts of our policy to clarify some of these grey areas, because they are grey areas. Because at the end of the day, we've got, you know, taxi drivers are going to go away on holiday and they want to dispense of that signage on top of their car.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Have we sorted that?
I think we've sorted it, but, you know, we're debating removing or keeping a condition. That condition is whether the sign should be on top of the car or not. And the question Councillor Gibbons asked is a fair one, because that is restricted to the condition we're debating now. So I understand the legal advice, but I also understand that we are actually debating that condition, and that condition does impact whether that driver can go on holiday with the sign or not under the current conditions. So it's a valid question, and I just agree with Councillor Gibbons.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just want to respond to Mr. Francis. I think I understood completely what you were saying. Your allegation was that Hackney vehicles were having their lights taken off when drivers were going to the station. If they and we've had confirmation from Mr. Bruff here that that the council does monitor that and does prosecute drivers that do it. So I'm not really sure what your point is then, that, you know, it is a condition of the licence that the council takes very seriously.
I would just say the reason I don't report them, because I understand where you're coming from, sir, I do. You're saying I should report them. Yeah. I'm not going to report that driver because I don't know that driver, and two, if they're concerned for their safety. I see a lot of drivers now driving around with the for hire sign on backwards, so the for hire faces back, so they then don't get jumped out in front of. I don't want to report those drivers for taking actions that they believe may or may not be right in relation to health and safety. That's why I don't report them. And I'm neither, nor am I a licensing officer or an enforcement officer. It's my job to be a taxi driver, to pick up those passengers, to make sure they're safe, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do today.
Councillor Scroggy.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a question for you. Obviously, I'm reading from your statement. You mentioned in 2.5 years you've been a taxi driver, you've carried 15,000 people. You also alluded to the fact that you transported key workers. I work in theatres at the Queen's Medical Centre, so obviously it's very much appreciated. But the point I'm trying to make is, obviously, I sit here and I represent the people of Gedling Borough. So I'm concerned with Gedling Borough. So the question I need to ask is, in the 2.5 years, how many incidents out of those 15,000 has been a health and safety at work or a public risk? Out of those 15,000 in the 2.5 years, how many cases do you know? Can you answer it?
Not from my perspective, and the reason for that, sir, is because if I am approached when I'm parked up in Gedling Borough, I have to take the fare. So if somebody approaches me and says, I want you to take me within the prescribed distance, within the prescribed area, I have to do it. When I'm outside of the area, I don't have to take those passengers. So the incidents for me won't happen in Gedling because I will take that passenger. I have a duty to do so, I have a legal obligation to do so, and I follow my legal duties. That's exactly why I'm here. In relation to outside, I cannot legally take a passenger off the street, and that is exactly what those people who cannot get cabs, who need help, who need to go to places because of the lack of taxis, are wanting me to do, and I cannot do it. And that for hire sign is basically telling them I can take them when I can't. And I care about those passengers. That's exactly why I'm here, sir.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Francis, if you are carrying out private hire work outside of Gedling, that is your choice to do so, isn't it? No one's forcing you to take private hire work outside of Gedling. So presumably, therefore, a solution would be that you don't do private hire work outside of Gedling.
but then people don't get transported. And then when people message me on my app saying, please pick us up because we can't get a cab, I'm a young girl on my own. When I get that is why we have Hackneys that can work everywhere else. It's called cross-border hiring. If you work for, say, a company in Gedling and you drop somebody off at Nottingham train station, you can legally pick up a fare at Nottingham train station that's pre-booked, so you can bring them back. That's exactly why cross-border hiring is clear. That's exactly why the triple lock is in place. And what I'm saying is that for hire sign is making me look like I'm for hire. There are people that can't get taxis. There are people that need and are desperate for taxis. And it is making the situation bad. People are trying to get in my vehicle. People are causing, it is a risk to health and safety. And just to, with all due respect, sir, just to tell me not to do it outside of Gedling is basically saying, don't worry, Mr. Francis, you can move on, which I can. I can go and get a licence somewhere else and not operate outside of Gedling. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here to try and prevent it from happening in the future. I'm here to try and stop people and potentially somebody ending up under the wheels of a Vauxhall Astor estate. That's exactly why I'm here. I'm not here to debate, sir, whether or not I'm going to carry out. Well, I can.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. Councillor Nayuk.
Yes, I know that. Yeah, I need this clarifying because nobody seems to be mentioning it much. The light on the for hire seems to be quite important. If the light's on, you're an available taxi. If the light is off, you're an unavailable taxi. Therefore, if you're parked at the station with your light off, surely you can say to the passenger, my light's off, I'm not available. So I don't really see the argument there. And now, perhaps it's just me, and now however you identify as a Hackney carriage, whether you're going to be bright yellow as they were in Portugal, or whatever other way it is, you've still got to differentiate, are you available or aren't you available? And you're still going to have that same problem. So, to me, you've got the choice of buying an expensive car or having the sign up with the light off. That seems how I'm seeing it.
I totally understand your point, Ma'am, I do. But try explaining that to somebody who's absolutely smashed out their face at 1 o'clock in the morning in Lenton, Radford, or in other parts of Nottingham where I cannot take that individual. I'm sorry. I do not mean to be rude. Please don't think I am.
I'm sorry, Mr. Francis. I believe that person would be trying to get into any car that was parked up. It has happened to me when my friend was waiting for her. My friend's husband was waiting for her and myself to come out of the theatre. People were trying to get in his car, and she was trying to get into her car with her crutches.
But the for hire sign adds to the risk because it's there. So somebody
I
then
don't
points
see
out.
that it does when that person.
So when somebody's pointing at the for hire sign and saying you're supposed to be for hire, even though I'm telling them I'm not, they wouldn't be able to point at the for hire sign and say
Your light was not on.
It doesn't matter, Mum.
Councillor Scroggy, then Councillor Gibbons.
I
think we're getting to the end of questions.
I keep coming back to the same question. How many incidents have you personally had in 2.5 years through the fault of the Gedling Borough Hackney Carriage sign being on top of your car?
I would say probably more than 30. And that's just my... Now, with regards to that, if I can just clarify, not all of those 30... Contrary to what people may see me here today, I'm actually quite a charming guy. I talk my way around a lot of things. In my personal life, I managed to talk my way into things. But anyway, I managed to diffuse a lot of the situations. But other drivers may not be so lucky. Not saying I'm, Brad Pitt or whatever. But what I'm also saying is all it takes, sir, is one incident to go horribly wrong. And I've got, well, like in Birmingham, the one I alluded to, they said he wouldn't take a fare without pre-booking. They smashed both his front windows and stabbed him.
Mr. Francis, with regards to that, do you know that he was a Hackney vehicle?
Does it matter if he's been asked to take a pre-booked journey and he won't? It's exactly the same situation.
Do you have any evidence that that vehicle, in that case, had a top light?
Considering it's going before court, no, because it's going before trial, I believe, in April.
Okay.
So it's an open case.
So there's no evidence that that vehicle involving that driver who was horrifically attacked, but there's no evidence that the existence of a roof sign had anything to do with that incident, is there?
But with regards to that, if I may say, Laura, if I may say, I'm allowed to answer the question, okay? He was asked to take a fare without a pre-booking. He didn't. They smashed his windows and they stabbed him. If I'm in the middle of Nottingham City Centre and I refuse to take a passenger without a pre-booking and they smash my windows and stab me, that for hire sign is likely to contribute to their rage because it says for
But
hire.
that's, Mr Francis, that's the point. There is any private hire vehicle being approached by a drunken person in the middle of the night wanting to get in would have to say to that person, I'm pre-bookable only. My point is, and the question to you was, is there evidence that that vehicle had a roof sign, or that added to that incident occurring, as opposed to the fact that it was somebody just being told, you need to pre-book that taxi?
I haven't said that there was. What I've said is, if the for hire sign is on it, it's likely to exacerbate the issue.
But there's no evidence of that.
There's no evidence, no. Of course there isn't, it's before trial, but there's no evidence it wasn't either.
Then Councillor Towsey Hinton, then Councillor Ellis.
Yeah.
I think we might be getting to the end of the questions.
Hopefully. Yeah, taking into account health and safety, which you've raised quite a lot. I mean, to me, it gives reassurance to lone female, vulnerable people if they identify a cab with a top sign on. It gives them an extra, and then they look at the plate, and then they go through the. To me, it's a reassurance, a perspective of reassurance, and not just a perspective. It's just another step towards their safety. And also, when you look at Gedling Borough, you look at them as a fleet, or with the uniform of signage on there. It gives you, a sense of well-being, of safety. On that one, that's I think when we're weighing up the balance between the health and safety issues that you've raised, there's also the health and safety concerns of potential passengers. Thank you.
But that can also have the opposite effect. That young girl can think she can go to that
It can,
and hire it.
But you were asked for evidence. Towsey Hinton.
Thank you, Chair. Could a solution be raised if you had a blank screen on top of your cab that looked like that? When it was illuminated, it displayed the words for hire. When it's not illuminated, it's just a blank screen, so it doesn't say for hire. Could that not be a solution to the whole situation?
Like this, that says Hackney Carriage on the sides of my car, so the roof sign, it doesn't. If you take the roof sign off,
but you got a sign anyway.
And then you put on the signs are on the front and the back. The argument is it's not identified from the side. So why don't we put this on the side?
But as we saw from the Worrell Avenue pictures, the sign was illuminated, and that would show up in daylight as well as the dark. That would show the words for hire because it's illuminated from the rear, backlit, as opposed to stencils on top of a white background which says for hire all the time.
That's a good suggestion, Councillor. I totally agree with that. But for me, today, that's something that you then remove the for hire sign and you look into whether or not that then goes on. The only thing I can say is the argument is that the for hire sign is there for safety, but there's been no...
I agree with you. That is the argument for today, and yours may be a future recommendation along with the other earlier one, so thank you. I now have Councillor Ellis.
Yes, I think, and this has been raised by Councillor Gibbons, it's very important, we're talking about public safety, it's very important that the public can with confidence identify a taxi that is legitimate and is not some fly-by-night character who may be a risk to them. There's a balance to be struck with this. And certainly the more signage that a taxi displays, it seems to me the safer the public will be.
Thank you. I can't see anyone else, so I am going to ask you to move back to the back of the room, and I'm going to move the recommendation. This is, as I said right at the beginning of this, the recommendation from the officers. I'm going to move it. Members do not make any amendments to Hackney Carriage vehicle licensing conditions for the reasons set out in the report. I will consider further comments, but I ask for a seconder. Thank you, Councillor.
Seconded.
Thank you. Okay, so it is now open for further debate as to the fine balance. We've heard that the balance of the vote was one vote different, so on
Chair,
a very
sorry.
small sample.
Sorry, Chair. Just with regards to some legal advice, just to help perhaps sum up before the debate. Just to clarify why we are here today, it's due to the application that was said at the start made by Mr Francis regarding the amendment/removal of the condition from the Hackney Carriage vehicle conditions regarding having the roof sign on the vehicle at all times. And this was on the basis that he claimed that the existence of that roof sign when undertaking private hire work was a health and safety risk to himself, his passengers and members of the public at large. On the last occasion, you did not agree with the request to amend the condition, but did agree to go out to consultation and seek the views of the trade and public. You've heard some concerns regarding that consultation from Mr Francis. The Council is content in the way that that consultation was undertaken, and indeed the results, as can be seen, was a balanced response. You must take into account the results and the responses of that consultation. You will also need to take into account the relevant information that you've read and heard from Mr Francis, along with the contents of the reports from the licensing officers and their views on this issue. It comes down to, as has just been highlighted, a balancing exercise that you need to now conduct. Are you persuaded that as a direct result of that top light, people trying to get into a vehicle? Or could it just as easily be the case that people would try to get into any vehicle, roof sign or not, dependent upon the circumstances, dependent upon the now lack of drivers thanks to COVID, as Mr Francis pointed out. But you must be satisfied that the risk to the driver's health and safety, bearing in mind the amount of incidents you've heard have been reported over this issue, outweigh the concerns officers have highlighted throughout the report, including the public safety element, as has been highlighted by some members today, that becomes from the unregulated ability of a Hackney Carriage vehicle to undertake private hire work wherever it may be in the country. The law expressly allows councils to put a condition on to identify a vehicle as a Hackney vehicle. And Mr Francis himself, in his representations, said customers don't care. They want a licensed vehicle. They don't care if it's got a roof sign or it's a Hackney. They just want to get into a licensed vehicle. And so it is a balancing act that you must now undertake, considering the evidence as to whether you're persuaded that there is sufficient there to look at going from the position that has been the council's for a number of years to amending or removing that condition, just to assist you with the things that need to be taken into account.
Okay. Councillor Wilkinson, then Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, we've had a lot of information given to us prior to this meeting, and a lot of information today, a lot of discussion around the pros and the cons of removing this particular condition. Laura is quite right. We can't completely disregard the consultation that was undertaken, but I do note that even if all those who responded to the consultation were Gedling Borough taxi drivers, licensed taxi drivers, that would equate to less than 5% of the taxi driver population. So you would have to have concerns as to the statistical relevance or importance of that consultation, and it was finally balanced. Mr. Francis has made a number of arguments regarding health and safety, but they largely seem to be supposition. They don't seem to be evidence-based. And as Councillor Ellis has said, there is a balance to be struck. And overall, I am not convinced that removing this condition would serve the interests of passenger safety in Gedling Borough. Therefore, I am minded to support the recommendation of the officers, which is not to amend the conditions as they currently are.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis?
Yes, I'm just asking for a point of clarification, make sure I've got this correct. A driver may apply for a private hire licence only if they wish to do so. Is that correct?
Yes, you apply for one or the other.
Or you can have both?
On two separate vehicles, there's only one licence per vehicle. So we won't dual licence one vehicle.
Right, so if you've got a Hackney Carriage licence, you can on occasions, or indeed almost exclusively, do private hire, but you are still bound by the Hackney Carriage regulations.
Like I mentioned earlier, the vehicle status does not change, whatever licence type it holds. The type of work does change when the Hackney Carriage performs private hire work.
So the driver has to make a choice?
The choice is there, private hire vehicle licence or a Hackney Carriage vehicle licence.
Councillor Scroggy?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm going to show where I am. I think today has highlighted that there is some grey areas within our policy and some stuff that needs to be clarified in our policy. Instead of having it at, obviously it offers this discretion, even though I appreciate the great advice that they do give us. Speaking to Mr. Francis about his driving experience over the last 2 years, he's done about 15,000 pickups in his time, and he's had at a minimum 30. Now, balancing that out, the percentage on that is extremely low. So I'm finding it hard to find the public health risk. However, I do believe that there should be an easier option for Hackney Carriage drivers to switch to a private hire so they can have the light removed instead of having to reapply. And maybe that's something that they can go forward with. But on the basis of today, I have to support the recommendation. But I definitely think there's food for thought here.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to make comment?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to support the recommendation, but Mr. Francis has raised certain points. There are certain grey areas within our policy where we could assist drivers. You know, the holiday example, we could make it known to drivers that they have got this facility. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to check whether this meeting can officially make recommendations legally, that we have a review of those grey areas, or do we have to wait for it to come formally? Because it's not on the agenda today.
Yeah, it's not something that that there can be any decision on today.
We can't take the decision.
Suffice to say, the rules regarding Hackney Carriage vehicles and private hire vehicles are set in years and years of case law and legislation, and to flick between is something that quite simply I wouldn't be sure that we would be able to entertain that. With regards to the issue over the practice of allowing drivers to put their plates in, that's certainly something that we can discuss. I know obviously the officers have a relationship with the drivers so much that they do come to them, But certainly that's something that can be looked at. The switching between the two, I don't think it would be as easy due to the status of the private hire compared to a Hackney carriage. It's a very different beast, shall we say. Yes.
Okay, so I don't think there are any more questions, so can we move to the vote, please? Those in favour of the recommendation, please show. Those against, please show. Abstentions, please show. Thank you very much. Did you get all that? Okay. So the recommendation from the officers is carried. Thank you. And I do think we will be looking at those very slight changes, but they will not affect the major recommendations which are about the health and safety of the public. Thank you very much for your time, everybody.